Now, what we just did, we just wrote four elements, four event handlers that we didn't need to write. So what I'm going to do now is show you guys an easier way to do this. And it's going to work the exact same. The only difference is how we think about the problem and how we think about the solution. So in order to write React, you need to think React. And React is all about reusability. So what we're going to do is we are going to create a new component under common, and we're going to name it field.js. So we're going to import React component from, why did that do that? From React. Going to get rid of that right there. And then we're going to say class field extends component. Then we're going to write the render method and export default field. Good stuff. We're going to save this. And then in contact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just copy one of these input fields, actually the entire form group. Yeah, because that's something that's common between all of them. All right, we're gonna copy the form group component. Gonna save, and then over in field we're going to type return, and we're going to return this, and re-indent, and then save. And then in contact, what we're going to do here is we're going to create a, well, let's import field. Okay, so import field from common field. And then in here, we're going to actually create an array of the input fields that we want. So it's going to be a constant, and it's going to be called fields. And then we're going to give it a name. We're going to give it element name. That doesn't need to be in quotes. It's going to be input. We're going to say type is going to be equal to text. So I'm just thinking about the different properties on these input fields. So we're also going to need ID, placeholder, and yeah. Okay. So ID is going to be name, let's get rid of those quotes. Placeholder is going to be your name. And I think that's good. So let's copy this, and actually we can get rid of some of these. We can get rid of the ID. We can just reuse the name property as the ID. Okay. So let's copy this, and we're going to need name, email, phone, message. So email, type is going to be email. Phone, type is going to be text. Let's change that. Your email, your phone number, and then the final one is going to be message. And let's make it say type your message. And the element name is going to be text area. Okay. So we've got these fields created. Now what we're going to do down here is a little bit of a problem. I know what we'll do. Okay. What we'll need to do actually, and this is because the structure of the form has two columns. So one column there and another column there. And it's going to be difficult to kind of figure out where each column should start and end. So what I'm going to do is separate them into sections. So we're going to need to modify the fields a little bit. We're going to make it an object, and then sections is going to be an array. And then, yes. And then inside this array, yeah, there's going to be two arrays. See how I'm breaking this up here. So we're going to map through two things here. Okay. So what we have is fields. We're going to map through fields.sections. And this is going to loop through twice. The first, it's going to be this array, and the second time it's going to be this array. And let's go down here and start that. So actually in the field, what I'm going to do is if the type, or if element name is input, we're going to do that. Otherwise, if element input is text area. So in here, we're going to say this.props.element name equals input. If it is, we're going to print out the input. Else, we're going to print out the text area. And the indentation got way screwed up with this one, so I'm just going to go fix that. Alright, so save this here. And now in contact, what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of both of these columns. So I'm going to select it and delete it. And the second one here, we can see the opening and closing tags. I'm going to select this one and delete it. And now we're going to save. And we are done. No, I'm kidding. All right, so let's go ahead and actually map through these now. So to do that, we're going to open up curly braces and we're going to say fields.sections.map. We're going to capture both the section and a section index. And what we are going to do with that is we are going to return div class name call medium 6. Now, something I'm not sure if I mentioned before, but within a map statement, when you open the function with curly braces and you type your return statement, if you want to return HTML, you're going to use the brackets just like with the render method itself. So now we're returning two columns because what's happening is it's, oh, we gotta get rid of that right there. What it's doing is it's mapping everything that's in here. So there's one array here and one array here, and if I actually, before the return statement, I'm going to console.log rendering section index with, well, that should be in quotes, with, and then we're going to actually print out the section. So I'm going to save and then come back here and go to console. Okay, let's ignore that. So rendering section 0 with, and now we see that in here we have an array, section is equal to array, which are each of these, and then rendering section 1 with, and then it prints out that. So in here, what we need to do is render through each field. So I'm going to re-indent, and we're going to open curly braces here, and we're going to say section.map, and here we're going to capture field and index. Now, I did not add a key property to the column, so that's what I'm going to do right now with section index. And then under the sections themselves, we are going to return field and field for a property that's going to pass in the name, element name, stuff like that. And then we're also going to set the key equal to the fields key. And then we're going to save and come back here, and we have a problem, and that's because our field doesn't have a state. So what we need to do actually when we return this is we need to set the value and the onChange handler. Now, where we're doing this within a map statement, it can get a little bit obscured, but all you need to remember is that field is going to have name. Name equals email, name equals phone, whatever. So we can use those keys to access the state. So we're going to say value is equal to this dot state, and then you're going to open up square brackets, and in here you're going to type the variable field dot name, and that's going to pass a property called value into the field component. So it's going to be this dot props dot value. And now we're also going to create an onChange handler in the exact same way that we did with the input fields, where we're going to capture the event and we're going to pass it to this dot set state. Now in here we need to open up for the key name of the object or of the property within the state that we're going to change. We're going to set that with opening up square brackets, and we're going to type field dot name and then colon and then e dot target dot value. So I'm going to save this, and this may look a little obscured, so I'm actually going to drop it down like this so you guys can see it a little better. And so let's read through this. The first field is name. So it's going to create a field instance with all the properties like the element name, ID, stuff like that, placeholder. And then we're going to set the value to this dot state and then whatever the field name is. In this instance, it is name. And on change, we're going to set the state of name equal to e.target.value. Now this isn't going to automatically happen on its own. What we need to do is save this and then start our work in the field component. So now in here, what we need to do is value needs to be this.props.value. And the same for the text area. The value needs to be this.props.value. And then on change, here's this is going to be a little different. All we need to do now is call the on change and pass in the event. So this.props.onChange with the event. All right, so we're going to copy this also over to the text area. We're going to replace that. And now for each of these right here, we can start using the props. So this is going to have a value of this.props.type. ID is going to be this.props.name. Placeholder is going to be this.props.placeholder. and they're all going to be required. Now I'm going to copy this, and we're going to replace the text area with it, and we're going to remove type. So I'm going to save, and then we can inspect the code a little bit. What we have here is the field. It looks just like it used to. So let's go ahead and go over to the React. And now when looking through the source here, the contact, when I type in the message field, we see it gets updated. And that's because down here, when we're actually rendering the fields, we see the properties that it gets. So it's getting the onChange handler that we're passing into it. It's getting the placeholder, the type, the value. And when we update the state of the contact component, it's going to know to re-render this with the new property. So I'm going to type in this, and we're going to see as I type that the field's property of value is going to change. And that's changing because from within the field component, we're calling the onChange handler and passing it back up to the contact component, which then goes into its state and updates that, and then it re-renders the relevant field. Now, once you are done with actually creating the form, we need to do something with it. And I really don't care what you guys do with it. Do something with it. I'm just going to make it alert your form has been submitted. So the send message button is what we need to key into there. And what we're going to do is drop this down a bit, and we're going to create an onClick handler. So onClick, and we're going to call our function of this.submit form. I'm going to save this, and then we're going to create that method here. So submit form, we're going to take the event parameter, and then we're going to arrow function it over to here, where I will call alert form submitted. Thank you very much. And hit save. Now, when we hit this, we see that all these are required. So let's go ahead and fill these out. And it seems actually that this input field is, or this button rather, is being hijacked. So what we're going to do is delete the ID, which I'm pretty sure is the property that it's getting it by. Maybe not. Maybe it's the form itself. So let's go ahead. Okay, so there is something in here that, I mean, it's keying into the, oh, this is, okay, so the form. All right. So what we're going to do, we could do two things here, and one of them, well, let's remove this. So we can either capture the on-click of the button or the submit of the form. If we want to capture the submit, like this button here, type submit, what you could do is replace the form with a div. So just rename that to div, and then delete the other properties there. Or you can have on submit, and we're going to call this.submit form, and I'm going to go erase that from the button itself. So I'm going to save, and It's not doing what we want it to. Okay. So let's say E prevent default. And it still does it. Sure, for right now, I guess what I'll do is just replace this with a div, which is how I normally do it anyway. And div, and then on click, I'm going to say submit form. When I press it, I don't get anything. So let's go ahead, and something is preventing that from working. Oh, I know. We forgot to pass in the E property to the function itself. There we go. Okay, so that's most likely. Let me retroactively go ahead and do this. I'm going to delete this. We're going to change the form back to a form component. And we're going to write on submit, and then I'm going to paste that I just copied in there. And we should see the same behavior. Yes. All right, so that is how to work with forms. Now, the other input types are going to be the exact same. If you want to have number, you would just set the type to number. Everything else remains the same. In the next video, we're going to be integrating the Formic library, and we're going to discuss an even smarter way to handle forms.